Welcome back, everybody. We have a lot to talk about as Funcom has decided to drop the hotfix out of nowhere midweek to completely alter the way that we will be playing the game in the deep desert. That's right, there will be huge implications on both the PvE and PvP sides and everything in between. So stick around and let's take a look at how this is going to affect you. Now, once again, I still believe that Funcom is holding and controlling things a little bit too much for this game. I still think that the absolute solution to maintain the happiness of everybody in the community is just to go back to the old format like they have with Conan, where you literally have just a PvP server, a PvE server, and then a contested PvE server. So that would look like everything is more or less safe. You can do whatever you want, which is what a chunk of the community is saying all the time. We just want to be able to build and gather and progress and then be done with the game. And then there's those that say, oh, I have fun whenever I PvP, but I still want to be able to get access to stuff. And then you have those that are saying, I just want all out chaos. Just split the servers up, Funcom. I don't understand how this is so complicated for you. Instead of actually playing to the total player base and making the maximum amount of money, you are literally isolating people and you are forcing them to do stuff that they don't want to. And in today's gaming market, this is not the way to make money. Now, to address the elephant in the room, the largest change that has just happened during this hotfix is obviously the change to the deep desert PvE PvP zones, which has now been halved, meaning A through D is now a dedicated PvE area and E through I is now a dedicated PvP zone. For PvE players, this is going to be a huge positive-ish thing that you can look forward to, because if you've been wanting to explore and gather resources and tackle challenges without constant PvP encounters, this is your dream come true. The Imperial testing stations, the caves, and other points of interest in this southern zone are now completely safe for peaceful exploration, and there's no more worrying about getting jumped while you're trying to figure out a puzzle. However, it's not a complete PvE paradise, because control points and shipwrecks will still be PvP hotspots across the entire map, even within the new PvE zone. So think of them like mini arenas or islands of PvE in a otherwise safe place. This means PvE players who want to engage with these specific activities will still face the risk of dangerous PvPers when it comes to Landsrad grabbing. For PvP players, this change has a few negatives. The dedicated PvP area is now smaller, meaning less open world PvP opportunities in the southern region, and it pushes the core PvP experience north, which could lead to more concentrated fights, but also less organic encounters across the wider map. Now, to include on this, what I'm trying to get at overall with this explanation is the fact that you have one of two outcomes that are going to be happening in terms of open world organic PvE encounters. Either one, you're going to actually start seeing a border patrol going from the DE border, where people are going to literally be flying and patrolling that area nonstop, and then reporting to their friends anytime they see somebody cross over into the PvP zone, which will unlikely lead to safety for that person. They are going to get blown up and ravaged somewhere out there, or they're going to have to turn around and just be completely frustrated. The second thing that I can say is just pure camping any kind of area. You're still not going to be able to get access to the large spice fields. You're still going to have trouble getting access to the wrecked ships and things along these lines, because what has already happened is people have already started logging characters off inside of these ships, and every hour and 45 minutes they log back in, they capture the loot, and then they log their character back out. So they're already on on cycle, just taking everything good in the PvP zones. Now that it's just a concentrated area of PvP and people who are going out there to like experience the deep desert, they're just going to double down. There's now half the amount of territory that they have to focus on in order to get these type of blueprints. So I'm gonna guess that there's nothing that's going to really change, except for the fact that if you are interested in trying to get into the deep desert to get resources, you now have a better chance to survive. So let's talk about the risk versus reward system that's out here, because this is where the balance truly kind of shifts. Funcom wants to make sure that deep desert still feels like a dangerous and lucrative place, so they have concentrated the good stuff up north, as we've already said. So for PvE players, this is a bit of a negative. The density of valuable resources, the largest spice fields, and the majority of control points will now be found in the northern PvP section of the map. This means that if you want the absolute best loot and the highest quantities of rare materials, you're going to have to go out and venture into these dangerous PvE areas. So basically in the PvE area, you'll find shared loot, balanced PvE activities. Each player gets their own loot, and you can expect around one schematic per activity. However, out in the PvP area, loot is first come, first serve, obviously, but with a much higher drop in quantities of everything. You can expect 2 to 6 schematics, including some of the rarest in the game, and this means that PvE players might feel limited in their progression if they refuse to engage out there as well. And here's a big one. Plasteel plates, for example, a crucial crafting material, can now primarily be found in the PvP zones or from crashed ships. So this means even in the PvE area of crashed ships, you are still facing PvP, right? While the initial announcement was inaccurate about their exclusivity of PvP, it still pushes PvE players away from easy access to certain materials. Also, the spawn rate of Titanium and Stravidium has been reduced in the PvE areas, pushing large quantities only to the far out PvP zones. And their respawn time is up to 30 to 45 minutes. This is a definite negative for PvE players looking to gather these essential resources safely. So basically, I spent the entire morning going to every single island out in the PvE zone, D to A, and I saw not one Stravidium or Titanium node spawn the entire time I was there. What I did see was 20 to 30 people island hopping, constantly hitting these things. So if you are expecting to be able to now get access to Titanium or Stravidium, dream on. You're going to have to beat the first person to that spawn. And now that we know that the spawn timers are like 30 to 45 minutes long, there are people who are going to be collecting this stuff on time spawned. So it's a rinse and repeat thing. They haven't really fixed anything here. They've just now made it easier for those hardcore farmers who want to get these materials, are just going to completely wipe them off the map every chance that they get. Now, the number of medium spice fields has also been reduced, while small ones slightly have increased. But this impacts everyone, but especially PvE players who might have relied on those medium fields for a more consistent spice income without PvP risk. So I've always preached in a lot of my videos on how to survive out in the deep desert if you want to be able to get these resources, was to find that little branch of islands out there that had like 5 or 6 nodes of titanium or small spice fields. And what I would say is that these are probably going to be less patrolled than the big or medium ones. And so with that huge deep desert that they had, you at least had a chance to like get out there to these rare, smaller island areas and gather stuff and bring them back. But now that half of that has been taken away, there's a lot less area for people to have to patrol. And with these small little spice areas, with the worm working the way it does out in the deep desert, meaning it comes to those spice fields a lot less than it does back in the Haga Basin. Once again, all the small and all the titanium and stravidium are getting just absorbed. They're getting vacuumed up. So this hasn't helped PvPers at all. What it's done is given you a chance to go into the deep desert and say, I'm here, but there's nothing out here for me, I still am going to have to go into the PvP zone in order to find the materials that I need to advance myself. Now, for PvP players, this is mostly positive because all the best resources, the biggest spice fields, and the majority of control points are now concentrated in your hunting grounds. This means more valuable targets, more opportunities for high stakes engagements, and ultimately a richer reward for those willing to brave the dangers. The increased schematic drops in PvP areas are also a massive incentive to kind of keep you going out there. Now, on top of that splitting of the deep desert, we have other issues which have been introduced in this hotfix, most to say the Imperial testing stations and vehicles. So let's touch on the Imperial stations first. Some are still in the PvP region, and to get all the weekly schematics, you will still need to visit both the safe and dangerous stations. This is a slight negative for strict PvE players, as it still pushes them into that danger zone if they want to maximize their schematic acquisition. However, I'm sure that there is some kind of RNG chance, no matter how slight it is, that you can still get the good blueprints from the PvE area. Possibly, I don't know. I'm just guessing that the way Funcom is changing everything for the PvE station of their player base, I couldn't see them not making this kind of change. So in addition, there are now these vehicle changes, especially to the Ornithopters, because equipping a rocket launcher module will now decrease your top speed by 20% if you're in a scout or 10% in an assault. So for both PvE and PvP players, this is a mixed bag because it's introducing a strategic trade-off. Do you want more firepower or more speed? For PvE players, it makes engaged dogfights a bit more tactical. For PvE players, it might just make getting around a little bit slower if you prefer a rocket launcher, although I don't think any PvE player is going to be putting rocket launchers on their Ornithopters. I think they are going to be putting some kind of storage, and they are going to zoom away before anything bad happens to them. A welcome change for everyone is that exiting Ornithopters mid-air now causes them to drop straight down instead of gliding away. This is a huge positive and should prevent those frustrating moments where your Ornithopter flies off into the distance after a disconnect or accidental exit. So no more losing your valuable aerial rides due to the whims of game physics. Now, overall, Funcom has definitely opened up the deep desert to PvEers, but have they really opened up the desert to the PvEers in the way that the community is looking for? Once again, I really think that Funcom is handling the way that they control this game in the wrong way. They need to just give PvEers their own server, they need to give PvPers their own server, and then have one of those nice little in-the-middle Goldilocks servers for people who want a little bit of both. Because if you're not able to get the resources that you're looking for in the safe zone of the deep desert and you're forced to go into the dangerous areas, you are still going to find a lot of frustrated people. So I think it is time that people start trying to push Funcom to make the right decision, not switch up stuff and lose a huge chunk of their player base. What do you guys think? Have you had any issues with the new hotfix and the way that it's working? Are you able to get your hands on any of these required materials to build stuff and to progress into the very end game? And do you think that there's actually a future for Funcom with Dune Awakening now that this has occurred, and the only thing that there's left to do besides avoid the small 4 zones of PvP is to just grind more and more of the same thing? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe. And as always, everybody, thanks for coming and have a great day.